What happens when two lonely souls cross paths on a dark night? Rachel, after a long day of work at a supermarket, finds herself immersed in a financial dilemma that haunts her. With the pressure of an audit revealing a deficit that could cost employees their jobs, she walks alone down a deserted street when she encounters Edith, an elderly and frail woman who needs help getting home. Initially scared, Rachel hesitates but decides to accompany her, unaware that this decision will change the course of their lives. Rachel has always dreamed of a better life, free from the financial worries that chase her. Since she was little, she learned to cope with loneliness and hardships, having grown up in an orphanage where she never truly felt at home. Now, facing the reality of an audit that could ruin her professional life, she feels the weight of the world on her shoulders. Upon meeting Edith, a woman who lives in a cemetery after being abandoned by her own son, Rachel finds herself confronted with a new challenge. The hostile environment and the darkness of the night reflect her own insecurities and fears. Edith's fragility deeply impacts her, making her reflect on what truly matters in life. As the two women walk together, Rachel begins to listen to Edith's story, which reveals her tragedies and the pain of abandonment. The loneliness of both intertwines, and Rachel discovers that the old lady has much to teach. During these conversations, Rachel opens up about her own problems, revealing her financial anxieties and her search for purpose. The emotional connection grows, and Rachel finds herself touched by Edith's generosity, who, despite having little, offers help that Rachel never expected. This exchange of experiences transforms the walk into a journey of self-discovery, making Rachel question her priorities and what it truly means to have a family. As the night progresses, the emotional tensions rise, and Rachel realizes that her life could take a new direction. She faces a dilemma: to remain in her comfort zone, where insecurity reigns, or to open her heart and home to someone who truly needs it. Edith's story is a constant reminder that even in the darkest situations, hope can blossom. Rachel feels a spark of determination ignite within her, driving her to seek a better future not only for herself but also for Edith. The unexpected encounter between these two lonely women promises not only to change their lives but also offers a valuable lesson. Amidst despair, kindness and empathy can create bonds that overcome any adversity. By deciding to help Edith, Rachel begins her own journey of overcoming, where love and friendship become the pillars for a fresh start full of possibilities. Rachel and Edith continued walking down the deserted street, their silhouettes highlighted by the dim light of the street lamps. The cold night wind seemed to whisper secrets, and each step they took together drew them closer, while the world around them felt distorted and distant. The conversation flowed like a calm river, but Rachel couldn't shake the shadow of doubt beginning to form in her mind. As Edith spoke about her life, the challenges she faced, and the losses she endured, the elderly woman's story made Rachel question her own strength. Deep down, she always considered herself resilient, but as financial difficulties mounted and the audit loomed, the pressure made her feel like a house of cards about to collapse. The idea of losing her job and, consequently, the security she had tormented her. The loneliness that had accompanied her throughout her life seemed to intensify. Edith, on the other hand, despite her condition, emanated an inner strength that Rachel couldn't fully comprehend. The lady spoke with a surprising calmness, as if she had found peace in her pain. "Life is not always kind, my dear," Edith said, as they paused at a small wooden bench where the elderly woman sat down to rest. "But how we face it is what truly matters." These words resonated with Rachel, but at the same time, they left her unsettled. She wondered if she really had the strength needed to overcome her own challenges. When they resumed walking, Rachel noticed a group of young people approaching. Their laughter and chatter contrasted with the heavy atmosphere of the night. She felt a knot in her stomach, a reminder of difficult times when she didn't fit in anywhere. And then, one of the young men, a disheveled-haired boy, recognized her. He was someone from the supermarket, someone who used to make jokes about work mishaps. "Look who's here. The supermarket employee in trouble." He laughed, and the others joined in. Rachel felt her face heat up, the shame washing over her like a wave. She turned to Edith, who watched the scene with a serene expression, but her eyes sparkled with a wisdom that Rachel admired. "Ignore them, dear. They know nothing about you," Edith said, but Rachel couldn't shake the weight of that moment. The laughter of the young people cut through what remained of her self-confidence. After the young people walked away, the walk continued, but the feeling of insecurity lingered. Rachel began to question if she could really help Edith. What did she have to offer? Her own life was on the brink of collapse. The idea of opening her heart and home to the elderly woman was terrifying. She could barely take care of herself, let alone another person. The dilemma presented itself to Rachel like a shadow that wouldn't leave her alone. Would she be able to confront her own loneliness and the challenges life imposed on her? The desire to help Edith clashed with the fear of failing. If she couldn't help, if she couldn't fulfill the promise of being a support, what would that say about her? And then, Rachel's financial reality began to manifest more palpably. A day after her encounter with Edith, she received an email from her supervisor, who had already noted the deficit in the cash register. There was a summons for an urgent meeting. Rachel's heart raced. The pressure of the audit was mounting, and the uncertainty regarding her professional future left her terrified. The fear of losing her job and the stability she had left was suffocating. Meanwhile, Rachel remembered Edith's words, "Life is not always kind." Those words echoed in her mind as she struggled to find a way. The idea of helping Edith felt like a burden greater than she could bear. What if she failed? What if it led her to lose what little she still had? The conflict within Rachel intensified. Doubt surrounded her like a heavy cloak, testing her courage and determination. The friendship that was growing between her and Edith was a beacon in the darkness, but the fear of failure and the uncertainties life imposed on her made her hesitate to take the next step. The internal battle Rachel faced became increasingly complex, and the dark night that enveloped them seemed to reflect her struggle for overcoming and connection. Rachel felt trapped in a whirlwind of thoughts. The pressure of work, the mocking glances of the young people, and the responsibility she felt toward Edith made each day harder. The idea of helping the elderly woman seemed like a light at the end of the tunnel, but at the same time, it was a weight that crushed her. She wanted to be strong, but doubt and fear paralyzed her. That week, things began to worsen. The supervisor's email was not just a warning but a harbinger of drastic changes. On the day of the meeting, Rachel arrived at the office with trembling legs. She knew the conversation would revolve around the deficit and potential layoffs. The hours leading up to the meeting were marked by a knot in her stomach, a mix of anxiety and despair. Upon entering the room, the atmosphere was tense. All eyes were on the supervisor, who began to present the alarming numbers with a coldness that chilled Rachel's heart. As he spoke, Rachel felt the world around her crumble. His words were like hammer blows in her mind, each one hitting harder than the last. "We need to cut costs," he said, and the phrase echoed in her head like a sinister warning. When names began to be mentioned, Rachel held her breath, fearing hers would be among them. The supervisor, in a serious tone, announced that some employees would be let go, but until that moment, no one knew who. The fear of being one of the chosen ones followed her like a shadow. At the end of the meeting, Rachel left with a heavy heart. The feeling of helplessness was overwhelming. What should have been an opportunity to fight for her position became a painful reminder of her fragility. As she walked home, she felt even more distant from Edith. How could she offer support to someone if she could barely hold her own life together? Doubt gnawed at her, and the thought that she could fail again made her want to shrink away. In the following days, the pressure intensified. Work became more stressful, and conversations about layoffs were constant. Rachel felt like a ticking time bomb ready to explode. To make matters worse, her financial situation was deteriorating. Bills piled up, and she began to consider cutting expenses in areas that had previously been non-negotiable, like the small pleasure of buying a coffee or a snack. With each passing day, loneliness became more oppressive, and the idea of opening her home to Edith became increasingly daunting. On the other hand, her friendship with Edith began to create a new dynamic in her life. The elderly woman, sensing Rachel's anguish, started to share more about her own story, revealing details that had previously been hidden. One day, while they were sitting in the park, Edith spoke about a dream she had when she was young. "I wanted to be an artist," she said, her eyes shining. "But life took me down unexpected paths. Sometimes, what we plan doesn't happen, but that doesn't mean we should give up." These words touched Rachel deeply. She realized that despite all the difficulties, Edith had found a purpose in her life. The elderly woman did not let herself be defeated by the circumstances surrounding her. However, Rachel's insecurity persisted. How could she, so lost and confused, help someone who seemed to have found meaning even amidst suffering? The tension between the two women began to grow. Rachel, in her internal struggle, started to pull away, avoiding meetings with Edith. She didn't want to be a burden or disappoint her with her weaknesses. The friendship that had once seemed a source of strength now left her feeling anxious. In turn, Edith sensed the change and tried to reach out to her, but Rachel continued to close herself off in her world of uncertainties. Rachel's financial situation worsened further when she missed a shift at work due to a severe flu. The lack of income brought a new level of despair. What to do? How to face the days without money? And amid all this, the fear that the audit could culminate in her dismissal became a ghost that haunted her day and night. It was at this moment that Rachel found herself in a dead end. She had no clear choices, only a sea of doubts. The weight of the responsibility she felt toward Edith and her own instability left her increasingly desolate. The life that had once seemed like a blank canvas was now a disassembled puzzle, where the pieces did not fit together. As night fell, Rachel wondered if she would find the courage needed to face her fears and open up to Edith again. She knew that the friendship they were building could be the key to her own overcoming, but it would require an act of vulnerability that she was not yet ready to give. The internal conflict continued, and Rachel's journey was far from over. On a rainy morning, Rachel decided that she needed to face reality. The weight of the past few days had left her exhausted, but something inside her cried out for change. As she walked to work, the rain streamed down the bus window, and she couldn't help but think about her situation. The idea of distancing herself from Edith troubled her. The elderly woman had become a kind of anchor amid the chaos, even if Rachel couldn't recognize it. That morning, while organizing her files at her desk, an unexpected email arrived. It was from her supervisor, requesting an urgent conversation. Rachel's heart raced. What could it be now? With a lump in her throat, she stood up and headed toward the supervisor's office. Upon entering, she noticed he looked visibly worried. "Rachel, we need to talk about Edith," he began, and the expression on his face made her heart sink. Those words brought a wave of emotions. Rachel tried to stay centered, but concern for her friend overwhelmed her. "She's not well," the supervisor continued. "We've received an alert about her health. We need someone to stay with her, and you are the only one who has the necessary bond." Rachel felt a whirlwind of emotions. It was the opportunity she needed to help Edith, but it was also a huge challenge. The supervisor explained that Edith had been hospitalized after a fall at home. She needed care, and the idea of being that person left Rachel in a state of panic. How could she care for someone when she could barely take care of herself? As she returned to her desk, the supervisor's words echoed in her mind. What would she do? The responsibility felt overwhelming. As the day went on, thoughts piled up, and Rachel couldn't concentrate on her work. Images of Edith alone in the hospital haunted her. A sense of urgency grew within her. That night, Rachel decided to visit Edith in the hospital. The journey felt long and heavy. Upon entering the room, the smell of antiseptic hit her, and her heart tightened at the sight of her friend lying in bed, looking fragile and tired. Edith's face lit up when she saw her, and a small smile formed on her lips. "Oh, my dear Rachel, you came," Edith said, her voice weak but filled with affection. Rachel sat on the edge of the bed and held Edith's hand. The connection she felt at that moment was palpable. "I'm here, Edith. How are you feeling?" she asked, trying to hide her own anxiety. The elderly woman took a deep breath and began to share her memories, her life experiences, and how art had always been her passion. "You know, Rachel, life is full of surprises," Edith said, her eyes shining. "I've learned that even in the worst situations, there's always something to learn. We mustn't let fear defeat us." Her words resonated deeply with Rachel. She realized that despite the difficulties, Edith had found strength in her vulnerability. The friendship they were building could be a source of support not just for Edith but for Rachel as well. As Rachel left the hospital, a new determination formed within her. The revelation that she could be the person to help Edith recover gave Rachel a new purpose. She realized that instead of hiding from her fears, she could use them as fuel to face the situation. The idea of caring for Edith was daunting, but it was also an opportunity for growth. In the following days, Rachel began to dedicate more time to the friendship. She made small visits to the hospital, bringing flowers and reading to Edith. Each day became a new chance to learn from the elderly woman. Their conversations about art and life inspired her, and Rachel began to reconsider what truly mattered in her life. The weight of responsibility was still present, but now it was accompanied by a new perspective. She was not alone in this struggle. By opening up to Edith, Rachel realized she was also opening up to herself. The difficulties at work, financial insecurity, and fear of dismissal began to feel less oppressive. By reaching out to help another person, Rachel found the strength she didn't know she had. Their friendship transformed into a mutual exchange of support. Rachel began to understand that life was not just about success and failure, but about connections and growth. Through Edith, she started to see that she didn't need to have all the answers, she just had to take small steps forward and allow herself to be vulnerable. From that moment on, Rachel decided that she would face her fears and become the person Edith needed. This new determination would change the course of her life, leading her down a path of overcoming, learning, and, above all, friendship. Rachel felt that her life had changed irrevocably after that moment in the hospital. The commitment she had made to Edith was not just a responsibility, it was a new way of seeing the world. In the days that followed, she became a constant presence at the hospital, and each visit seemed to strengthen the bond between them. With every conversation and shared laugh, Rachel felt lighter, as if she were leaving the weight of her own insecurities behind. However, not everything was easy. Work continued to demand from her, and the responsibilities at the office did not lessen. The pressure mounted as her team faced tight deadlines and new projects. Rachel tried to balance her professional obligations with the new routine of caring for Edith, but sleepless nights began to take a toll. She often arrived at work exhausted, struggling to concentrate. Her dark circles became noticeable, and her colleagues started to pick up on her lack of focus. "Rachel, are you okay?" a colleague asked, looking at her with concern. "You look tired." Rachel forced a smile. "I'm just a little busy." But inside her, the battle was intense. She wanted to be the friend Edith needed, but the pressure from work was building up like a storm. With each passing day, the fear of not being able to handle it grew. And amid the stress, a doubt began to arise: would she be able to manage all of this? In those dark hours, Rachel often retreated to the bathroom, where she allowed herself moments of solitude. She looked in the mirror, searching for some answer in her own reflection. "You are capable," she told herself, but the words sounded empty. Insecurity knocked at the door, whispering that maybe she wasn't strong enough. It was during one of those breaks that Rachel decided she needed help. She talked to a trusted friend and vented about her situation. "I don't know how to keep going like this," she confessed, her voice trembling. "I feel like I'm sinking." Her friend listened attentively and, with an understanding look, suggested that Rachel seek balance. "You don't have to do everything alone. How about delegating some tasks at work? And maybe exploring support groups for caregivers? It might be good to share experiences with others who are going through the same thing." Those words lit a spark in Rachel's mind. She realized that to take care of Edith, she needed to first take care of herself. So, she gathered her courage and spoke with her supervisor about the pressure she was facing. To her surprise, he was understanding and willing to help, adjusting deadlines and suggesting that she prioritize her mental health. With that, Rachel felt a little lighter. She began looking for support groups in the community. At one of the meetings, she found others who were going through similar situations. They shared stories, laughter, and tears, and Rachel realized she wasn't alone on this journey. Each meeting inspired her and encouraged her to keep going. Her friendship with Edith also evolved. Rachel started bringing new elements to the visits. She began to bring art supplies, encouraging Edith to draw and paint again. The elderly woman, with a sparkle in her eyes, rediscovered the joy of creating. Together, they explored colors and shapes, and through art, Rachel found a new way to connect with her friend. However, not everything was perfect. Edith's setbacks were frequent. One day she seemed full of energy, and the next, she felt tired and unmotivated. These ups and downs left Rachel emotionally drained. Sometimes, she found herself lost, unsure of how to help. Insecurity would return, and she questioned if she was doing enough. One night, after a difficult visit, Rachel sat on her sofa, exhausted. She looked at the walls, which seemed to close in around her. "I don't know how to keep going like this," she murmured to herself. But then, she remembered Edith's words about finding strength in vulnerability. Inspired, she decided she needed to talk to her friend about her insecurities. On the next visit, Rachel, with her heart racing, opened up. "Edith, sometimes I feel like I'm not doing enough for you. And that scares me." Edith looked at her with tenderness. "Darling, you are already doing more than you can imagine. What we need is presence, love. And you give me that every day." Those words were a balm to Rachel's heart. From that moment on, Rachel decided not to let difficulties bring her down. With small changes in her routine, she found ways to take care of herself while being present for Edith. Their conversations became deeper, and their friendship solidified into an unbreakable bond. Rachel learned that challenges would never completely disappear, but she could face them with courage. And in taking care of Edith, she discovered that often, the greatest gift one can offer is one's own vulnerability, allowing oneself to feel and share. Thus, together, they continued to create new stories, turning each obstacle into an opportunity for growth. Rachel felt her life had changed irreversibly after that moment in the hospital. The commitment she had made to Edith was not just a responsibility, it was a new way of seeing the world. In the days that followed, she became a constant presence in the hospital, and each visit seemed to strengthen the bond between them even more. With each conversation, each shared laugh, Rachel felt lighter, as if she were leaving the weight of her own insecurities behind. However, not everything was easy. Work continued to demand from her, and responsibilities at the office didn't diminish. The pressure increased as her team faced tight deadlines and new projects. Rachel tried to balance her professional obligations with her new routine of caring for Edith, but sleepless nights began to take their toll. She often arrived at work exhausted, struggling to concentrate. Dark circles became visible, and her colleagues began to notice her lack of focus. "Rachel, are you okay?" asked a colleague, looking at her with concern. "You seem tired." Rachel forced a smile. "I'm just a little busy." But inside her, the battle was intense. She wanted to be the friend Edith needed, but the pressure from work was building up like a storm. With each passing day, the fear of not being able to handle it grew. And amid the stress, a doubt began to arise: would she be able to manage all of this? In those dark hours, Rachel often retreated to the bathroom, where she allowed herself moments of solitude. She looked in the mirror, searching for some answer in her own reflection. "You are capable," she told herself, but the words sounded empty. Insecurity knocked at the door, whispering that maybe she wasn't strong enough. It was during one of those breaks that Rachel decided she needed help. She talked to a trusted friend and vented about her situation. "I don't know how to keep going like this," she confessed, her voice trembling. "I feel like I'm sinking." Her friend listened attentively and, with an understanding look, suggested that Rachel seek balance. "You don't have to do everything alone. How about delegating some tasks at work? And maybe exploring support groups for caregivers? It might be good to share experiences with others who are going through the same thing." These words lit a spark in Rachel's mind. She realized that in order to care for Edith, she needed to take care of herself first. So, she gathered her courage and spoke with her supervisor about the pressure she was facing. To her surprise, he was understanding and willing to help, adjusting deadlines and suggesting that she prioritize her mental health. With that, Rachel felt a little lighter. She began to seek out support groups in the community. At one of the meetings, she met others who were going through similar situations. They shared stories, laughter, and tears, and Rachel realized she was not alone on this journey. Each gathering inspired her and encouraged her to keep going. Her friendship with Edith also evolved. Rachel started bringing new elements to their visits. She began to bring art supplies, encouraging Edith to draw and paint again. The elderly woman, with a sparkle in her eyes, rediscovered the joy of creating. Together, they explored colors and shapes, and through art, Rachel found a new way to connect with her friend. However, it wasn't all smooth sailing. Edith's relapses were frequent. One day she seemed full of energy, and the next, she felt tired and unmotivated. These ups and downs left Rachel emotionally drained. Sometimes, she found herself lost, unsure of how to help. Insecurity crept back in, and she wondered if she was doing enough. One night, after a difficult visit, Rachel sat on her couch, exhausted. She looked at the walls, which seemed to close in around her. "I don't know how to keep going like this," she murmured to herself. But then, she remembered Edith's words about finding strength in vulnerability. Inspired, she decided she needed to talk to her friend about her insecurities. On her next visit, Rachel, with her heart racing, opened up. "Edith, sometimes I feel like I'm not doing enough for you. And that scares me." Edith looked at her with tenderness. "Dear, you are already doing more than you can imagine. What we need is presence, love. And you give me that every day." Those words were a balm to Rachel's heart. From that moment on, Rachel decided not to let difficulties bring her down. With small changes in her routine, she found ways to care for herself while being present for Edith. Their conversations became deeper, and their friendship solidified into an unbreakable bond. Rachel learned that challenges would never completely disappear, but she could face them with courage. And, in caring for Edith, she discovered that often the greatest gift one can offer is their own vulnerability, allowing oneself to feel and share. Thus, together, they continued to create new stories, turning each obstacle into an opportunity for growth. Rachel felt that the weight of the world was on her shoulders. In recent days, Edith's relapses had become more frequent and severe. It was as if the light that once shone in her friend's eyes had dimmed, and this affected Rachel deeply. She felt powerless, as if she had failed in her promise to be by Edith's side. During one visit, she found the elderly woman sitting on the bed, with a distant look. "Edith, are you okay?" she asked, trying to hide the worry in her voice. "I'm tired, Rachel. Sometimes, I feel like I don't have the strength anymore," Edith replied, sadness evident in her expression. That sentence hit Rachel like a punch to the gut. It was the first time her friend had shown such vulnerability, and it made her realize that behind the courage she tried to convey, there was a fragility that needed to be addressed. That night, Rachel couldn't sleep. Edith's words echoed in her mind. "I don't know how to keep going like this," she thought, remembering the insecurities that consumed her. The pressure from work, the challenges of caring for Edith, and the feeling of being on the brink of collapse left her distressed. She got up and started pacing around the house, looking for a way to organize her thoughts. She decided that she needed an honest conversation with Edith. The next day, when she arrived at the hospital, she found her friend in a moment of weakness. She began to speak, her voice trembling. "Edith, I feel like I'm failing. I don't know what to do to help you. Each passing day, I feel more lost." Edith's response was immediate. "Rachel, you don't need to be perfect. I don't need a hero, but a friend. And you are exactly that for me." Edith's words touched Rachel in a way she didn't expect. In that sincere exchange, something inside her began to transform. She realized that the pressure she felt was largely created by her own expectations. She didn't need to burden herself with the idea of being Edith's savior. Instead, the friendship they cultivated was already a significant step for both. From that moment on, Rachel decided she would face her insecurities head-on. She realized that she needed to find a healthy balance, not only for herself but also for Edith. Thus, she began to divide her work responsibilities more efficiently, delegating tasks and asking for support from colleagues. Her supervisor, noticing her struggle, offered more flexibility and understanding, and Rachel gladly accepted. In the days that followed, the relationship between the two women grew stronger. They began to have more open conversations about their emotions, and Rachel started to understand that vulnerability was a form of strength. During each visit, she brought new activities, from board games to painting sessions. This not only entertained Edith but also allowed Rachel to express herself and connect with her friend in new and meaningful ways. One morning, upon arriving at the hospital, Rachel found Edith with a radiant smile. "Look, I did something," the elderly woman said, showing a colorful drawing she had made. It was a depiction of a blooming garden, and Rachel's eyes sparkled at the joy it brought her friend. "It's beautiful, Edith. You have real talent," she exclaimed, and the two laughed together, the tension from the previous days dissipating. But, as life is unpredictable, a new challenge arose. A test revealed that Edith's health condition had worsened. Rachel felt the ground open beneath her feet. It was as if all the hopes they had built together, all the laughter and moments of joy, were threatened. That night, she sat alone on her couch, her mind filled with doubts. The following morning brought a new light. Rachel decided she would not let fear take over. If Edith was fighting, she would fight too. With renewed courage, she went to the hospital and sat beside her friend. "Edith, I want you to know that, no matter what happens, I will be here. It doesn't matter what that means. We will get through this together." The tears in Edith's eyes were a sign that her words had meaning. And in that moment, Rachel realized she was not only helping Edith find strength, she had found her own. Their friendship transformed into a safe harbor, where they could support each other, acknowledging their vulnerabilities and celebrating their victories. Rachel learned that challenges never completely disappear, but it is possible to face them with love and solidarity. Vulnerability, once seen as weakness, became a symbol of strength. Together, they continued to create new stories, turning every obstacle into an opportunity for growth and friendship. Rachel's journey not only strengthened her bond with Edith but also taught her that sometimes true courage lies in opening the heart and allowing others to help carry the weight. Rachel felt she had crossed a barrier. The heartfelt conversation with Edith had changed the dynamic between them, and now, more than ever, they were together in the struggle. With each visit to the hospital, Rachel grew stronger. She realized that by sharing her insecurities, she was allowing Edith to do the same. The fear of failure was replaced by a feeling of unity. On that particular day, while sitting next to Edith, Rachel observed her friend's features. The wrinkled skin, the white hair, and the weary expression told the story of a life filled with challenges and achievements. "You know, Rachel, sometimes I wonder how you manage to be so strong," Edith said, breaking the silence that surrounded them. "I'm not strong, Edith. I just refuse to give up on us," Rachel replied, her voice firm yet gentle. The two women looked at each other, and a deep understanding passed between them. The love they shared didn't need to be perfect, it just needed to be real. Edith's recovery would not be easy. There were good days and bad days. On one of those bad days, when the pain seemed unbearable, Rachel was by the bedside, holding her friend's hand. "You're with me, aren't you?" Edith asked, her voice barely coming out. "Yes, I'm here." "I will always be," Rachel assured, feeling the weight of responsibility, but also the lightness of being present. She knew that being by Edith's side was more important than any words of encouragement. It was the presence that truly mattered. As the weeks passed, the hospital became a second home for Rachel. The routine of visits, conversations, and activities became a foundation in their lives. Rachel began to bring books, stories, and even songs that Edith loved. They spent hours laughing and talking, and even in the toughest moments, there was a spark of hope lighting up their faces. However, the emotional impact of the difficulties began to show in Rachel. Sometimes, she found herself crying silently after leaving the hospital, feeling overwhelmed. On one of those nights, she decided to confide in a longtime friend, Clara. "I feel like I'm losing control. I'm so tired, Clara. What if something happens to Edith? Rachel, you can't carry this weight alone. You need to take care of yourself too. Edith wants you to be well," Clara replied kindly. Clara's words echoed in Rachel's mind, and she realized she needed to find a balance. It was no use helping her if she was destroying herself in the process. So, Rachel began to set aside time for herself. She signed up for a yoga class and started taking walks outdoors. These small changes in her routine helped her recharge and view life in a lighter way. During one of those walks, while observing the flowers blooming around her, Rachel had an epiphany. She realized that, like the flowers, life has its cycles of growth and rest. When she returned to the hospital, she found Edith smiling. "You look more radiant today, dear." "What's going on?" the elderly woman asked, her genuine curiosity shining in her eyes. "I'm learning to take care of myself, Edith. And that means I can take better care of you," Rachel replied, feeling warmth in her heart. The two shared a moment of mutual understanding, knowing that the strength of their friendship became more evident as each cared for herself. Days turned into weeks, and the relationship between Rachel and Edith blossomed. They became more than friends, they were partners in life. Rachel began to understand that vulnerability had its place and that opening up did not make her weak but rather more human. One afternoon, while they were together watching the sunset through the hospital window, Edith spoke with a tone of gratitude. "Rachel, you've taught me that it's possible to find light even on the darkest days. Thank you for being here. And thank you for showing me that strength lies in sharing our fears and joys," Rachel replied, feeling light. They knew that no matter what the future held, they were ready to face it together. The love and friendship they built became a refuge, and Rachel finally understood that each step taken side by side was a testament to the strength they had within themselves. Rachel watched the friendship that had blossomed between her and Edith, feeling transformed. The weeks they spent in the hospital not only strengthened their bond but also changed Rachel in ways she had never imagined. Once, she saw herself as fragile, someone who feared pain and loss. But now, she realized that true strength lies in vulnerability, in the ability to open her heart and share fears and hopes. The journey alongside Edith brought forth aspects of herself that had been dormant. Laughter, conversations, and even the quiet moments became essential parts of their lives. Rachel learned that taking care of herself was not a selfish act, but a way to honor the friendship they had built. Each yoga practice, each outdoor walk helped her recharge and return to the hospital with a new perspective. As time went on, Edith's health began to improve. The regular visits from doctors and nurses brought good news, and the hope for a brighter future started to materialize. During one of those sunny days, while Rachel was reading to Edith, the elderly woman interrupted with a smile. "You know, Rachel, I never thought I could find so much joy in a place like this. Your presence makes everything feel lighter." Rachel smiled, her heart warmed. "That's what we do for each other, Edith. Friendship is a balm in difficult times." They laughed together, and Rachel realized that this connection, this exchange of love and support, was what truly mattered. Rachel's transformation wasn't just in her own well-being, but also in how she viewed the world. Her friendship with Edith taught her to appreciate the small moments in life and to find beauty even in the most challenging situations. She now understood that each day was an opportunity to learn, grow, and love. When the day finally came for Edith to be discharged from the hospital, Rachel was there, emotional and full of hope. They left the hospital together, like two warriors who had faced a battle and emerged victorious. The sun shone brightly, and the fresh air seemed to promise new beginnings. "Let's make new plans, Edith. The world is waiting for us," Rachel said, feeling more alive than ever. Edith nodded, her eyes sparkling. "Yes, dear. Now is the time to cherish every moment." And so, the two women embarked on new adventures, exploring life outside the hospital, further strengthening their bond. Rachel understood that true wealth was not in material possessions, but in the experiences and connections she cultivated. With each shared laugh, each tear wiped away, she became a fuller version of herself. Reflecting on her journey, Rachel realized that every challenge faced alongside Edith had taught her valuable lessons about love, friendship, and resilience. And as she looked to the future, she knew that regardless of the obstacles that came their way, they would be together, ready to face whatever life had in store for them. The story of Rachel and Edith is a powerful reminder that true strength lies in human connection. May each of us find the courage to open our hearts, to cultivate friendships, and to support one another. And, more importantly, may we always seek the light, even on the darkest days. If you also have a story of overcoming challenges or a friendship that changed your life, share it in the comments. Your experience could inspire others to find strength in their own journeys. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more heart-touching stories. Together, we can create a community of support and love.